Ireland is affectionately known as the land of 1,000 welcomes, and this is reflected in the well-known phrase Céad Míle Fáilte, meaning 100,000 welcomes. And the friendly, welcoming nature of the Irish people is considered among its key tourist attractions even today. So, why is it that the Irish people are seen to be among the friendliest in the Western world? Well, the answer can be found in Ireland's ancient cultural past, a time when it was once against the law to refuse hospitality to others, when there was a universal obligation to provide hospitality to any member of the free classes who required it. A refusal to offer hospitality amounted to an offence under the law called Ishéan, or driving away. Hospitality was therefore both a culturally ingrained and legally enforced norm. One must welcome strangers to their homes warmly as guests. This meant that every Irish homestead was liable to receive a knock from an unexpected traveller passing through their lands. In such event, they should be given hot water and a hot meal, including vegetables and meat, a clean warm bed, and fireside entertainment in the form of singing and dancing, playing music, reciting poetry or telling stories. All skills that could be easily found among the family members of every household. There were sensible reasons for such a custom becoming so strong. For one, it meant everyone could be sure of safer travels over Ireland's rugged and boggy landscape. But perhaps more importantly, it also facilitated the exchanging of ideas and trade, helping to develop good relations between otherwise unconnected tuatha. And all of this in turn helped in the formation of a common cultural identity. These customs continued from the earliest periods right through to the Christian age and can still be found in remnants today, from the custom of switching on the kettle for a cup of tea a moment after the visitors are greeted, to the generous portions of food offered in traditional pubs and restaurants, and just the generally open and friendly, approachable demeanour of the Irish people themselves. An anonymous verse from the 13th century reads, O King of Stars, whether my house be dark or bright, never shall it be closed against anyone, lest Christ close his house against me. If there be a guest in your house, and you conceal aught from him, 'tis not the guest that will be without it, but Jesus, Mary's son. So we can see here how in later times the custom of hospitality was even given a semi-divine reverence among the Christian Irish. Women could lose their honour price for refusing hospitality to any law-abiding person, and monasteries could lose their privileged status and the protection of the law for driving away a weary traveller who was seeking food and rest. However, under the actual laws of hospitality, there were limitations on the amount one was expected to give, and this amount was based on the grade of the host. For example, the younger members of the tuatha, who were of the class of Fair Medbot, a man between huts, or an Ochara, a young chief or lord, was only required to give hospitality directly to their own lord on account of the smallness of their wealth. In such cases, a guest would be sent to the father of the Fair Medbot or the lord of the Ochara to receive hospitality from them instead. But the general obligation to provide hospitality did not extend to outlaws or criminals. Hospitality had to be refused to these classes of people. We can see the culture of hospitality in the high social office known as the Brehon or Hospitaller, who ran one of the many open guest houses that once existed across the island up until the 16th century. These open guest houses were essentially free hostels that provided room and food to all who required it. In a sense, we could think of these houses as a type of public service, a public house, one that served the function of fulfilling the obligations of hospitality that were common across the whole island. And it was the role of the Brehon to provide this hospitality. And this came in the form of free food, safe quarters, a warm place to sleep, and fireside entertainment. And this was to be made available to any who asked of it, regardless of their rank and without cost. His refusal of any guest meant an automatic loss of his high-grade status. According to the Brehon law, a man is a brigu until his refusal, and he is not to keep an account against any person, however often he comes. And from the old Irish triads, there are 3 things a brigu must have: a never dry cauldron, a dwelling on a public road, and a welcome to every face. Imagine if you could just leave your hometown and travel anywhere in the country, knowing that wherever you go, you could be sure to find a place where you will be greeted warmly with an offer of a hot meal and a warm bed at absolutely no financial cost to you. Naturally, although this service was free to the brigu's guests, it wasn't without a cost to the brigu himself. Someone had to pay for this service. Although they were partially supported by the local fleadh and the wealthier members of the tuath, a brigu had to be a man of significant wealth. The old laws state that he is not a brigu who does not possess 100-fold wealth, and if they happen to possess twice the wealth of a low-grade fleadh or noble, they would themselves become part of the noble and privileged classes. If a brigu's dwelling happened to be situated at a place where there were 2, 3 or more roads meeting close by, such as at a crossroads, they were considered to be a higher grade than those whose dwellings just happened to be on one road. There was a high regard held for the office of brigu, as it was felt that he performed a very important social function, that is, fulfilling the universal duties of common hospitality. And it was in the interest of the whole tuath to make sure visitors were adequately received as guests within their territories. The custom was ancient. We find reference to one of these open hostels in the great saga of Irish myth called the Tombo Cooley, or the Cattle Raid of Cooley. The colourful tale titled The Durga's Hostel is named from the scene of the famous Ulster king Conor Moore's last stand and the place of his ultimate death, when he is ambushed by the 3 sons of the Daoise who sought vengeance on Conor after he had exiled them to Scotland, which was then called Alba. And I mentioned this story just to highlight the antiquity of the customs of these free hostels. How great it would be if these hostels still existed, and we could just travel around the country freely, knowing that wherever we end up, we will have a place to stay, warm food in our belly, and the promise of a nice hot cup of tea.